This is the
Five Stars
podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
So, what do you guys want to talk about? Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Well, the good news is I'm not in a rush to get out the door this morning. I actually slept in an extra half hour today. Bad news is I wanted to take a walk early, but weather's not looking all that clear today. So we'll be cooped up inside most of the day, it would seem. I'm going to go hit the weights later this morning and see how that goes. I've been doing the 5-day workout regimen, and got to admit, I got a lot more energy than I did when I was doing 4 days. I don't know if it's my body readjusting or could be the creatine powder. I just find myself less inclined to want to take afternoon naps on weekends now. I still occasionally doze off for about 15 minutes in the afternoon, but like full-fledged naps, nah. I've been busy going through finances and helping out with paperwork on my family's end, which, God, is that a multi-step process in and of itself? Going through old bank accounts, looking up information for usernames and passwords, trying to figure out what's auto pay versus what's not, what loans are paid off in full versus things that aren't. This is the kind of crap you're in store for when you get older, folks. And it never gets any easier to navigate. My favorite is when I find the credit card accounts for things that I never knew existed. See, my life has always been simple. I have a debit card, I have a checkbook, and I carry a little bit of cash with me. That's it. I don't have 6 different credit cards linked to 6 different accounts. I don't overcomplicate my finances to the point where even I can't track stuff. And I'm super anal about trying to keep all my money in order. I only recently in the last year started vlogging and journaling my daily schedule in a date book. I think Cornette got me hooked on that idea. Just because he had so many calendar books documenting virtually every single day of his life on the road when he was a talent back in the day. I started wanting to jump on that bandwagon when I moved to Ohio, but I kept putting it off. I don't know, it just makes it seem like I have something valuable going on in my life that I can look back in later years and think, hey, you actually achieved something, or you actually did something interesting to an extent. Anyway, that's a quick life story update. Nothing's changed. I'm still boring. And now we'll get into the podcasting part of today's show, the wrestling talk. Welcome back, everyone, to the Five Starr Wrestling Report. We're the wrestling podcast no one knows but everyone needs. Make sure you subscribe, comment, give the show a like if you haven't already. I did do a channel update last week in terms of what's going on this coming Friday. There will not be a Friday show coming up on the 3rd. Did not get a chance this weekend to watch either Mid-South or the TBS Superstation show. Saturday was a marathon day. The paid marathon day. But like, I didn't end up getting back to my place until around 4 in the afternoon. By that point, I was exhausted, and I just wanted to read a book and not have to think anything work-related. Because believe it or not, that's what this podcasting is like a lot of the time. It's an unpaid job, which is even more demanding than a paid job. I love talking about wrestling, but a hobby is a hobby. And sometimes you got to make sacrifices along the way to balance out your life. So we'll hit the Retro Raw review today. We'll reconvene the following week for, I believe, the In Your House recap. I'll also have an extra paid holiday this coming week because of the 4th. So the 3-day weekend will give me a chance to get back into the flow of everything. But with that, I just started briefly looking down and saw my notes that I took for Raw this week. We're in for a rough one, folks. Let me tell you. A rough one, but also a super serious one. After all these weeks of idle threats and manipulation, Paul Bear is done jacking us around. It's time to reveal the Undertaker's super secretive of all secrets. Time to pull back the curtain and open up that closet of skeletons. What is it that Paul knows about The Undertaker that we don't? What personal life story has he been holding over us for weeks? Well, not just weeks, years. I know this semi-dramatic build makes it seem like I'm putting it over. I would not say I'm putting it over. The payoff I would absolutely put over, because it was a cool moment. But the actual backstory, it's a giant can of worms that we're going to talk about when we get to the actual segment. But this was the hooking point to get people to tune in. More of that sports entertainment drama. Meanwhile, it only took him like 45 minutes to actually acknowledge that there's a pay-per-view on Sunday. You know, the In Your House pay-per-view in Calgary. The Canadian Stampede. The pay-per-view that's less than a week out. Yeah, they certainly weren't in a rush to promote anything on that card ahead of time. In fact, up until this show, I don't think they announced anything except for that 10-man tag. They finally pieced together the rest of the pay-per-view on the go-home show. You know, I'll share my overall thoughts on the show at the end, but let me just say while it's on my mind, I know we're still in a period where the primary bookers were Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, and Jim Cornette, with Russo having input, but still being heavily filtered out with all the bad ideas. If you would have told me ahead of time that Russo had locked the other 3 guys in a closet this week and just took complete and utter control of the book, I would not have doubted you for a sec. This show was a giant, muddled mess. So much so that it nearly drove me to become an alcoholic by the end of it. God, dude, all the people out there that still have this nostalgic sensation for the Attitude Era. What the fuck are you smoking? Jesus. You know there are still fans out there that think this period was great? This period of endless non-stop crash TV BS where every match has an overbooked run-in. They all go 2 minutes and end in a DQ. You can't tell who's on whose side, why guys are mad at one another, and who the hell they're even trying to get over a lot of the time. Everyone's acting is hideously phony and unrealistic. The show's awful, man. Just awful. And we're barely even scratching the surface of some of the most miserable material yet to come. I just want to set the stage ahead of time so you can mentally prepare for what we're about to talk about. We begin with Ken Shamrock versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley. We also had what I believe was the first official promo that Chyna ever cut in the WWF. They aired a pre-tape right beforehand where she flexed for the camera and said that she's the world's most dangerous woman. And I assure you, my delivery of that quote was about 10 times better than hers. I don't think I can possibly attempt to be as robotic as she was. It was that moment where I determined, so that's why they mainly had Chyna be a mute for most of her career. She could not talk. Her promos sucked. So this was comical in more ways than one. I got amused watching Hunter try to grapple with a legit MMA fighter. Keyword, try. The biggest pop out of anything in this match was Earl Hebner getting into a shoving match with Hunter after he refused to break in the corner. It was also during this segment where I officially determined that they absolutely ruined Ken Shamrock's credibility. The minute they had Chyna grab him by the trunks and run him into the ring steps, that was it. Credibility instantly shattered. I'm willing to suspend disbelief when it comes to many aspects of pro wrestling, but when a 130-pound woman throws a 240-pound grown man into the ring steps, and the man has to sell it, you've lost me. That one, I'm not buying. I don't care how muscular said female is. And you see, this is where I think a lot of this revisionist history stuff starts to come back and bite fans in the ass. All the people that used to rave about Chyna and how the WWF presented her as a star, to me, they're just certain thresholds that I am not willing to cross. And I really think the WWF jumped the shark big time when they started having her get physical with the men. In a way that just didn't look legit or realistic. That's the key. You know, again, we're not talking about trying to going out there and beating up a Harvey Whippleman or a Kai and Tai member, someone with far less physical stature. The fact that she did this to Ken Shamrock, who, by the way, is somebody that they've actually done a relatively decent job getting over since he came in. All of that was immediately shot when they did that spot here. I'm sorry. Blow it out your ass if you don't like it. It also didn't help that Hunter basically spent the entire match beating the shit out of Ken, only to lose when Mankind distracted him at the end and Shamrock hit a belly-to-belly from out of nowhere. So to recap, Ken got his ass beat for 99% of the match and only won because another guy distracted his opponent for 8 seconds. And he got lucky. So I didn't like the structure to this match at all. I thought they did astronomical damage to Shamrock here. Plus, he was a total bit player. That Mankind distraction spot, that was done to set up a match between him and Hunter at the pay-per-view. Shamrock was a total afterthought in all this. So already we're off to a bad start with Raw this week. Lord knows it only got worse from there. Following that, they aired a VTR package on Ahmed's heel turn and all the subsequent storyline stuff with the Nation from last week. All of which turned out to be a giant waste of time in hindsight. Frankly, I don't even know why they bothered airing this. They already established last week that Ahmed was hurt and wasn't going to be getting the title match with Taker at the pay-per-view. The only thing I got out of this was him mumble-mouthing his way through another indecipherable promo from a hospital bed. Kind of like how Hawk and Animal rambled through an indecipherable promo about animal excrement. My only other comment about this segment, and it is a fairly noteworthy topic, I believe this was the official on-camera debut for one Michael Cole. And, well, yeah, I'm not about to sit here and do a 15-minute diatribe about the career of Michael Cole in the WWE. And the fact that he's still a lead commentator today should really tell you something. He's one of those guaranteed job for life type employees. And whether you like him or you don't, you gotta respect the hustle. Michael Cole was and always will be a die-hard WWE loyalist. Never taken a job anywhere else. Never had a desire to go work for another promoter. Even post-Vince regime, he's still there. His hair is a lot grayer now. That's about the only difference. I will say, he definitely learned how to be less antsy in front of the camera over time. God, I even remember listening to him do SmackDown when he was the main when he was the main commentator for the first few months. He was so on edge, you know, worried about fucking stuff up and just, I mean, you can hear it in his delivery. He's always been a pretty bombastic commentator, like the loud in-your-face type of guy. But he always sounded so nervous for the first few years. I think when they finally paired him with Taz later on, he started to mellow out a little bit. I wish he could have done more commentary with Jim Cornette as a dance partner. But there you go. Michael Cole. He has arrived. For better or worse. And get ready, because you're going to be hearing a lot more of Michael Cole in the coming years. Is he better than Todd Pettingill? Well, to be honest, most interviewers were. So we get the Road Warriors taking on Farouk and D'Lo of the Nation. After they showed us Sonny's titties. No, I'm not kidding. They actually showed us her tits. She She had a stack of bills stuffed in her cleavage while they were promoting the $1 Million SummerSlam challenge. Because where else would you store money like that? She looked good. I didn't get much out of the information regarding the $1 Million challenge. I was busy observing tatas, if you know what I mean. I probably would have preferred looking at Sunny longer if it meant I didn't have to watch this fucking match. This about sucked a hairy dick. It went 3 minutes. The Road Warriors beat up the Nation Geeks the entire time until the Hog Farmers hit the ring with a slop bucket and knocked Hawk out with it. And then Farouk got the pin, even though he wasn't the legal partner at the time. And this is what the Road Warriors are reduced to in 1997. They are now getting beat in the middle of the ring via gimmick slop bucket in under 5 minutes. I liked how JR's biggest concern here was the fact that the wrong guy got the pin for the Nation. Never mind that another team interfered and were responsible for costing the LOD the match in the first fucking place. It was more offensive to Jim Ross that the illegal partner stole the pin for the heels. Jim spent way too long in the territories. And then the Nation did a promo with Vince. God, this part was incredibly stupid. If you thought that tag match was nonsensical, get a load of this horse shit I'm about to talk about. So the Nation are doing their heel promo on Vince, complaining about getting sidetracked for a title shot because they're black. There's a point where Vince brings up Crush in the DOA, which Farouk basically swept under the rug and dismissed immediately. Way to put over the new biker gang. And then who should come out but Savio Vega in all white gear. He's a babyface now, since Farouk barred him from the Nation. And he's calling the group out now, saying that he never needed them in the first place. Farouk calls him an, and I quote, jalapeno pickin' ass. He challenges Savio to come down and fight the Nation. To which, who should then come out but 3 other random dudes dressed in all white gear. These men were never identified. We were told they were a part of Savio's gang. In fact, I believe Jim Ross's exact quote was, "Savio's got a gang now." Indeed. And they all hit the ring and immediately started beating up the Nation. Oh, you'll be shocked to hear, in all this pandemonium, the crowd utterly silent for this brawl. I had to look this up because I had no earthly clue who any of these men were. Upon reading about this group on the interwebs, I learned that Savio Vega had formed a faction in 1997 called Los Boricuas, a faction that consisted of Savio, Miguel Perez Jr., Jesus Castillo Jr., and Jose Estrada Jr. And out of all 4 of those guys, I knew Savio, I knew Miguel, never heard of Jesus Castillo, and Jose Estrada. Well, I know Jose Estrada Sr. Wasn't Jose a manager in the WWE later on, too? Or am I thinking of somebody else? I don't know. The point is, not only did I completely forget this group existed, I didn't realize that this faction is around for the next 2 fucking years. These guys lasted longer than the DOA. And I remembered the DOA. I didn't remember Los Boricuas. They paid these guys to literally do faction warfare over the next 8 months. They apparently at some point get a tag team title shot, which, I mean, sure. Hard to imagine how that's possible. A 3-way multi-person faction feud with the Nation of Domination, the DOA, and Los Boricuas, where it's nothing but endless brawling and fighting for months on end. Geez, now what modern company does that sound like? No wonder nobody ever got over in this fucking feud. By the way, speaking of the DOA, this is week 2 of their involvement on television, with them riding out to the ring on their motorcycles and getting into a fight with other dudes. We are yet to be informed on who Crush's teammates are. They still have not been given names. I know who they are, but as a casual viewer watching the show from week to week, we simply know them right now as Crush's buddies. They're 3 generic big-looking dudes with biker outfits who help Crush beat people up. His posse. Again, I reiterate, no wonder none of this ever got over. This shit sucks. You know what else sucked? Having to hear Los Boricuas rant loudly in Spanish. They had 90 seconds to do a promo. At no point did Savio bother to introduce anybody in his group. They just screamed at the camera and talked about how they love to fight. Epic. I still don't care. Nor did I care about Scott Putski versus Brian Christopher. The only noteworthy factoid about Scott Putski's in-ring career was that he was the son of Ivan Putski. That was his biggest claim to fame. Nothing against him. He had a great fucking physique. Boy, did he ever. Unfortunately, many athletes in this industry had great bodies that never really translated to stardom. He was simply out there to put Brian Christopher over. Plain and simple. It was another week of Lawler covertly denying any familial relationship with Brian. He also spent several minutes making bad Polish jokes. I wrote here, a fine wrestling match with zero heat because no one is yet to be given any reason to give a shit about this light heavyweight division. Which is pretty much what this is all centered around. I also wasn't a fan of them trying to kill Scott Putski at the end of this thing. You know, I watched this spot back several times. I have no idea what the hell they were thinking. Okay, so Scott goes to pick up Brian like he's going to give him a running power slam. Like the one that Bulldog used to give. And when Lawler goes to sweep out his leg, he does it at the exact moment that Scott is about to drive Bryan down to the mat. So, as they're both going down head first, Bryan then has to try and cradle package Putski into a pinfall. And the point is, Scott came down and landed right on top of his fucking head. I seriously have no idea how he wasn't concussed. Who thought that spot was a good idea? There's absolutely no way you can protect yourself doing something like that. Maybe they mistimed it. I don't know. And literally, all of that, just so Lawler and Christopher could beat him up more after the bell and make more bad Polish-related jokes. So they beat Scott Putski, and then they also effectively buried him as he was leaving the ring. Unless this is all leading to some kind of blow-off where Scott gets his revenge on Bryan. Maybe he gets to beat up Lawler in a week. I don't know where any of this is going. All I know is, if this was Scott Putski's only appearance on Raw for the WWF in 1997, way to make that poor fool look like a spare prick at the wedding. Jesus Christ. You know what dawned on me at this point? We were barely a half hour into the show. Not only had I completely given up trying to pay attention, I seriously contemplated just turning off the rest of the show and saying, fuck it. I'll just wait for the pay-per-view in a week. I am rapidly running out of steam when it comes to this Retro Raw series. The regret is real. For the amusement of those who like to see me suffer, y'all can get some mild enjoyment out of it. But if there's anything that'll contribute to my receding hairline, this review series, man. By the end of 1998, I'll be as bald as one of the fucking Harris twins. This show is rotten, dude. God, is it bad. One of the rare highlights this week was Brian Pillman versus Mankind, which they kind of shoehorned right at the end of hour one and let it bleed over into hour two a little bit. Yeah, Brian Pillman versus Mankind in a straight wrestling match with no gimmicks. A highlight of the show. Imagine that. I would not say the entire segment was a highlight, just the actual wrestling part. Before I talk about that, though, apparently there was an angle they did on Shotgun Saturday Night where Pillman assaulted a fan. And this alleged attack resulted in Pillman getting, and I quote, fired. But you see, no, he wasn't fired from the WWF. He was fired from Shotgun Saturday Night. He is no longer permitted in storyline to appear on the B Show. My heart aches for him. How could Pillman possibly go on not getting the opportunity to appear on Shotgun Saturday Night? As if anybody could have possibly cared about that program at this point. I've never heard anything so stupid in my life. That'd be like the Four Horsemen smacking a mark around at ringside during a live event, and then being told that they weren't allowed to make any more appearances on fucking NWA Pro. Like it really would have affected their pocketbook any. So now that Pillman is banned from the B show, well, here he is on the A show, wrestling a good match with Mankind for several minutes. Couple things to note. In Mankind's continual attempts to try to recruit Steve Austin as a tag partner, Austin did a picture-in-picture this week where he called Mankind an idiot, and he said nobody's going to take the tag titles from him or his unidentified tag partner. I'm yet to understand the logic in all this. Okay, so at the same time Austin doesn't want to lose the tag belts, he also doesn't want anything to do with picking or choosing another tag partner. I know this might seem like circular logic. I'm having a hard time conceptualizing this. You don't want to lose the tag straps, yet you're not in any hurry to find a replacement partner to help you hold on to said tag straps. It's a very goofy storyline. Not as goofy as Brian Pillman threatening to jam a pencil in Mankind's ear. Not even his good ear, the fucked up one. The overbooking at the end got kind of ridiculous. After Mankind does an injury angle by going after Pillman's ankle, you had Hunter and Chyna running down to get involved, and while they both casually ran distractions with Hebner, you also had shit going on with Hunter accidentally hitting Pillman over the head with a chair on the floor. You know, at some point, Pillman had taken off his boot to try to whack Mankind over the head with it. Pretty sure that spot was utterly pointless. Meanwhile, Mankind went to chase after Hunter and Chyna with a chair as Pillman gets back in the ring and wins via countout. It's just way too much clutter happening at the end. It's not even the good kind of chaos either. It was the, I can't keep up on my notes, there's way too much going on kind of chaos. The Vince Russo inspired chaos. Chaos for the sake of chaos. How many more times can I spam the word chaos? Probably more than enough to drive you insane. Just like the booking on this dumbass program. God, how many more segments do I have? I'm just trying to see how much torture I have remaining here. Doesn't look like much. Paul Bear promo. He looked into the camera and was very rotund, ovular, plump. Dare I say, fat. Do I still have the Scott Steiner drop here? I know I don't have it queued up right now. I'll have to post-produce that one.
He's fat!
There you go. And so then we had the big reveal. Here comes Paul, wobbling and hobbling his fat ass down to the ring. And before he even gets in the ring, this is just one of those TV moments where you look back and think, how have we stooped so low as a wrestling culture? Paul gets to the bottom of the aisleway, and you see this young female Mark waiting in the wings so she could, quote unquote, attempt to tackle him to the ground. this, well, here's the thing. Paul got tripped up, but it wasn't due to any efforts of this fan. She tried to double take Paul down at the ankles, completely and utterly failed at doing so, to the point where I laughed. Paul's just looking down at her, trying to shrug her off. Is that this idiot actually stood a chance at taking Paul down for a shoot. And it's only because Paul stumbled over his own foot trying to get around this dumb bimbo did he end up falling over on his ass. So she gets grabbed by security and taken away immediately. And then Paul just gets up, casually dusts himself off, and gets in the ring. Totally no-selling everything, by the way. They just moved right along and pretended none of that shit just happened. That wasn't part of the script. Live TV, folks. What are you going to do? So anyway, about that big secret, Paul. Lay it on us. And so he unveils the story. It dates back 20 years to when the Undertaker's family ran a mortician's home. A good old ma and pa shop. And in addition to Taker's mom and dad, it was him and his little brother, a sweet kid named Kane. Of course, we all know Cain has always been associated in the Bible with sweet and innocent. Oh, the irony. Oh, and by the way, keep in mind, the entire time Paul is trying to lay out this bullshit story, Vince McMahon cannot keep a straight face doing the interview. He is trying so desperately not to burst out laughing. Part of it, I think, was Paul's delivery. But there's another part to me that thinks even he knows how ridiculous this all sounds. Meanwhile, he was the guy that practically came up with the fucking idea. Him and Bruce. Anyway, I'll try not to get sidetracked here. There's a lot of material to cover. So yeah, Paul was basically an apprentice/assistant for the Undertaker's father. He taught Paul everything he knows about how to work in his field. Everything about the job was great, except for Paul's relationship with Taker. He always knew that Taker was disturbed. He was always wreaking havoc at the home. He was one of those troubled Utes. Meanwhile, Kane was the innocent one. He was the one who looked up to his older brother and followed him around everywhere. And as Paul would survey the brothers getting into trouble and, well, let's be blunt, doing things that young stupid boys do when they don't know any better, there was one particular day where something just didn't seem right. As Paul was getting ready to leave the funeral home to go to school, he saw Taker and Kane doing something devious. But of course, he had educational requirements to commit to, so he thought nothing of it. And that's when shit hit the fan. Came home later that night, and what should he see? Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, the entire funeral home engulfed in flames. And of course, Kane, nowhere to be seen. The mom, nowhere to be seen. The dad, nowhere to be seen. There was one person that Paul saw, and it was the Undertaker, hiding in the bushes like a coward. And that's when Paul realized the Undertaker did the unthinkable. He murdered his family. No sooner should Paul call out the dead man for being a goddamn murderer, do they immediately cue up the spooky thunder and the flickering lights in the arena as they pitch to break. The only thing missing from the equation was the old 1950s radio horror stinger, like Inner Sanctum or Lights Out. Nobody knows what the hell I'm even talking about. And so, well, they come back from break. We see Paul and Vader in the back talking about something for about 5 seconds. And then they immediately pan the camera over to show Mark Merrow and Sable standing in front of the coffin for the $1 Million SummerSlam challenge. There was absolutely no follow-up with the Paul Bearer promo. The announcers immediately changed subject and did not bother to comment on anything we allegedly heard about The Undertaker being a murderer, that he killed his family. By God, we got more important things to attend to, such as Sable grabbing a handful of bills and showing off her cleavage. I repeat what I said. The Undertaker, in storyline, was accused of murdering his family, setting a funeral home on fire, committing what is essentially a homicidal offense. They just moved on. You know, like Paul was out there casually talking about the weather or something. Oh, that's really unfortunate news, but hey, guess what? Titties! I mean, you know, I guess technically the statute of limitations would void The Undertaker of being tried with any charges. It has been 20 years. That also begs the question of why Paul decided to wait until this point to reveal all this information. Well, like I said, it's silly. I'm surely not going to pretend that any of this has a grain or shred of believability to it. If you try and remove all sense of reason and logic behind it, just watch it in a vacuum. It wasn't all horrible. Paul's delivery was excellent. He was probably the only one that could manage to get this story across and not make it sound completely ridiculous. It was very much a WWF storyline, though. And as we'll continue to see, it only gets crazier and more outlandish. Then we went back to the ring for Owen Hart and Davey Boy versus the Headbangers. Next round of the tag tournament. The long and short of it is, anytime Owen and Bulldog were in control, the action was fine to passable. Anytime the Headbangers were in control, it absolutely sucked. The best part of the segment was when they tried to pitch to a Bret Hart split screen, and because they didn't have their shit sorted out beforehand, they actually didn't have Bret queued up yet. So Vince goes, and joining us now is the Hitman. Hitman, are you there? No, I guess he's not. Oh, God. I needed a good laugh at this point. That was some well-deserved comedy relief. WWF in 1997. Still Bush League when it came to communication with the production staff. Joining us now, Bret Hart. Bret, you there? No, guess he's not. The fuck, dude. By the way, it wasn't even a split screen. It was just an audio. It was Brett coming through on the phone line. And he talked about the 10-man tag on Sunday. Said the Canadian fans are going to give his team a well-deserved, polite reception. And while he's in the middle of talking, we see Owen and Davey cut off the skirt-wearing sissies as they go for their powerbomb finish. And then Owen jackknife Mosh, I think it was. And he got the pin. And then for absolutely no reason other than we need more unnecessary angles to take place on a show with already way too much shit going on. After Owen and Bulldog win, the Headbangers try to jump them. To no avail. They just shit-can them immediately like total job guys. And then who should show up but Jim Cornette. And, well, a few things here. First and foremost, at some point they had quietly dropped the Camp Cornette stuff and had Jim disappear from TV as an on-screen manager, which I believe was a decision that Vince made when they started giving Cornette more duties in terms of booking and being an agent/producer. So they made the choice to take him off TV altogether. That part I remember. What I didn't remember was the part where he had suddenly turned on Davey and Owen and was now an adversary to them. I remember there was dissension amongst Camp Cornette members for a period of time, but I don't remember Jim playing a part in any of that. I remember the dissension coming with Clarence Mason, and then Clarence separated from them and did the Nation thing. But Cornette was just completely written out of the equation altogether. We never heard any follow-up with him. He just quietly dispersed. But now we come to learn that these guys are apparently enemies now. I also don't remember Cornette making a random return to television, now managing the Headhunters and or the Arabian Butchers, depending on which name you remember. Everybody pretty much knows him as the Headhunters. I think this is the only time where they were ever acknowledged as the Arabian Butchers. This brief little run in the 97. Funny thing is, we actually saw these guys in the WWF prior, but it was such a fleeting moment you probably don't remember it. They were both involved in the 1996 Royal Rumble last year, but I think they both got eliminated in like 30 seconds and were immediately forgotten about. And so, well, I'm not shitting you. This is what happens. They both jog down to the ring. Keep in mind, both these guys are like 350 pounds apiece. Cardio was not necessarily their strong suit. The fact that Corny almost lapped them getting down to the ring, that should tell you something right there. So they both get in there. Davey and Owen immediately start beating their asses. Within a matter of seconds, Davey gave one of them a body slam. Just completely shot all credibility with these guys right out of the gate. And amidst all of that, these fucking goddamn idiot headbangers, they just won't go away. They're in there fighting with Owen and Davey. After Owen and Davey beat them up and left them for dead, They just got back in there and started fighting. And finally, I'm trying to get my way through. This segment had me rolling on the floor. I was in tears. So it's a three-way brawl. By the way, we've already seen a three-way brawl on this show in hour 1. Here we are in hour 2. Another fucking three-way brawl. The crowd, again, dead. They don't care. They do not give a single fucking shit about anything happening in the ring. The best part, Owen and Davey, they just leave. They bailed out. They just saw the writing on the wall and said, you know what, we're done. Screw this. At some point, while the headhunters are still beating on the headbangers, Vince is just casually bringing up the Paul Bear promo from a few minutes back. I think he got bored watching all of this. And I think it ended after the headhunters laid out the headbangers with moonsaults or something. Ass. Everything about this was just exactly that. And again, I have no explanation for what Owen and Bulldog did. I think they legitimately said, fuck it. They saw what was happening and were like, yeah, we're done with all this, brother. We don't want to get any more of that stench on us. Can't blame them. Seriously, what was this? Who the fuck was responsible for producing this segment? They immediately killed the new tag team that showed up. The heels, who spent the entire time beating up the baby faces, just arbitrarily decided to beat up the other set of heels for no reason. The baby faces randomly decided to leave mid-brawl. I have no words. This segment broke me. At this point, I was just laughing. I mean, I had already completely given up, but the show at this point was comedy. It was comedy hour. I have no other way to justify it. I was so emotionally disengaged. Everything to me was just funny. I was driven mad. They tried to follow that with The Undertaker giving his side of the story of what happened at the funeral home. By this point, I couldn't even muster up the ability to type notes. I was so fed up. He blamed Kane for being the one to set the family on fire. Said Kane was responsible for everything. And how Paul basically bullied The Undertaker into visiting the charred remains of his family at the morgue or something like that. And how Taker has the image ingrained in his head of what his mother looks like in that physical state. He tried to cry. It sucked. And now The Undertaker is using his inner rage to channel the spirit of his family in order to strike down Paul. There was something incredibly stupid like that. All I know is they went heavily overboard with the post-production on this thing. And God bless Taker, but, you know, by this point, they could have had Jimmy Valiant be the one to try to deliver the same promo. It still would not have been enough to save this fucking wretched program. Speaking of wretched, we were supposed to get Vader versus Rockabilly. My notes read the following. Vader versus Rockabilly. Billy hits Vader with a guitar shot. Vader no-sells and starts beating him up. Undertaker hits the ring for, I think, the disqualification. Although we never had a bell sound to actually start the match. And then the Undertaker started attacking Paul, right as Paul screamed that Kane is alive. That he's risen from the ashes. Actually, I believe his exact line was, he called him on the phone. Right. I know it might seem like I'm glossing over a lot of shit here. In some ways I am. But I'm actually not being facetious when I say that entire segment there, that lasted all of about 90 seconds. In sequential order of all those events I just recapped, that all happened in less than 2 minutes of airtime. Vader versus Billy Gunn went to a no contest as The Undertaker ran out, jumped Paul at ringside, and got him to admit that he outright gaslit The Undertaker in that previous promo. I know it's easy enough to say, can you at least try to sparse out the material a bit more so we can actually digest everything? Well, ideally, yeah. But that would imply that these people had any sense of time management. Or should I say Russo had any sense of time management? Not his booking philosophy. By God, if you got a segment that goes more than 5 minutes, may as well be an Iron Man match, brother. And then, as God is my witness, I'm not making this up. The fucking TV main event this week. This had to be a rib on me. I have no other way to justify it. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Jim Neidhart. After all the torture I had to suffer through in the previous 2 hours, these fucking assholes, they booked a TV main event with Jim the Anvil Neidhart in a singles match in 1997. Fuck. No, at this rate, I'm convinced they were just daring people to turn the show off. They were not even trying to be remotely competitive with Nitro this week. I don't know what was happening on the other channel at this particular time without looking it up. I can assure you, though, it was way better than this horse shit. So they had this god-awful, horrendous match. The one benefit to watching a Raw with too much crap going on is that the match mercifully didn't exceed 5 minutes. It was still approximately 4 minutes and 30 seconds too long. They shot an angle in the back with Bret Hart attacking Shamrock when he was watching on a monitor. This also had me laughing at a couple points. There's a moment where you see Shamrock grab this giant barrel right before he falls down. And it's one of those deals where you see him fall back with the barrel in his hand. Just the sight of this barrel landing on top of him as Bret's standing there beating the piss out of him. more unintentional comedy. I also liked when the random old guy tried to casually walk in to pull Brett away. He looked like an elderly man trying to help his wife get out of the car. Brett just shoved him aside like, "The fuck are you doing, dude? Get out of here." And this is all mainly a distraction so we didn't have to witness Neidhart getting several more minutes of boring heat on Austin. At one point, he pulled down his straps to reveal his visible overbloated beer gut. A sickening sight. After all the pandemonium I had witnessed since this program first started. Meanwhile, I'm watching Neidhart put Austin in a chinlock for 9 hours. I think I lied. This match may have gone longer than 5 minutes. I know it wasn't incredibly long, but 5 might be understated. It was more like 8, counting commercial. So in other words, about 7 minutes too long. All I know is Neidhart eventually missed a big splash. Austin started firing back and trying to milk a comeback on a guy who was visibly blown up and could barely stand. And no sooner should I say that, should Bret Hart hit the ring for the disqualification, which ensued even more chaos and pandemonium. And because I really don't feel like ranting any longer, let me give you a quick summation of the remaining minute of airtime. Bret and Neidhart attack Austin. Bret locks in a figure 4 around the ring post. Mankind runs down and puts the mandible claw on Bret. Pillman and Owen run out to ineffectively thwart Mankind. Owen gives Mankind a chair shot to the back, which he effectively no-sells. Presumably, Bret still has his fucking figure 4 applied to Austin while all this crap is happening outside the ring. I give up. I'm done. This show sucks. It is a horrible, horrible wrestling program, everybody. I don't know what else to say. This may have been the worst go-home show hype I've ever seen for a WWF television program. There have been some bad ones. Lord knows, the last 4 years we've been doing this Retro Raw review series, we've seen some pretty bad go-home shows. At the same time, though, I can't think of a show recently that had not only terrible pay-per-view hype, but the show as a whole was equally, if not even more terrible than usual. Like, this had to have been an active attempt at running off as many people as possible. Because I have no other explanation. How do you even begin to book something this bad? Like, you actually have to try. I'm convinced. If I were heavily medicated, had zero experience, and never watched a day of pro wrestling in my life, I guarantee I still couldn't book something this atrocious. Whatever the fuck happened this week, like if Vince McMahon just let Russo have free reign of the book, I don't know. But this is a miserable viewing experience. Thank God we get to talk about that 10-man tag next week. I'm telling you, if I had to suffer through another 2-hour Raw with this kind of shit being presented to me, I'd have rage quit the podcast. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. Don't watch this show. It was bad. Hopefully the pay-per-view isn't as bad. I know historically that main event is considered one of the all-time great WWF pay-per-view main events, at least when it comes to the In Your Houses. So that, I guarantee, will hold up over time. The rest of the show, that's kind of a crapshoot right now. We'll see. I mean, there are only 5 matches on the card because that 10-man tag goes a long time. God, what was it, like 40-something minutes? Let's see here. I'm looking up the one that doesn't have the results. Oh, no, Jesus. It only went 25 minutes. That was way off. Still, though, there's only 4 matches on the card. One of them was a dark match. Yeah, we got Hunter and Mankind, the Great Sasaki and Taka Michinoko. Then we got the Undertaker Vader WWF title match. Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did throw that in there. There was a Great Sasaki video package that lasted like 30 seconds. It was him just doing a bunch of high-flying moves. And then JR was like, hey, he's making his pay-per-view debut on Sunday. Cool. Meanwhile, Taka was the one who ended up getting the contract. Well, what are you going to do? Anyway, folks, I'll talk to y'all in 7 days. Get a chance to regroup this week and, I don't know, try to get some of my personal life sorted out. I've been trying to do that for the last 30 years. Still haven't accomplished much. But all I can do is take it one day at a time. Anyway, take care all and peace out.